We are back, Golenbock University 101. I'm Ralph Tyko, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. The host is Peter Golenbock. The co-host is Alan Blumkin. And the weak link of the whole thing is Ralph Tyko. How are you, Peter? How are you, Alan?
Okay, it's pretty miserable up here, though. It's like the high 40s and windy. And
I live in St. Petersburg, Florida, and it's absolutely beautiful, and I'm living in paradise.
I know you are, because on the West Coast, there's a St. Petersburg, Florida, that's Alameda, California. Very, very close in terrain, and I guess we must average 71 degrees throughout the year.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, I heard they rained out in San Diego today. They
did.
Yeah,
for the first time in 5-6 years. Yeah.
Whoa. I'd like to talk about something that turned me so off to a region in the United States of America that for the first time in years, I was shocked because I thought there was a complete turnaround in the mindset of Boston, Massachusetts. And this on following the week where we celebrate Jackie Robinson week, this was terrible. There was an instance where 35 people were ejected from Fenway Park for calling racial epithets to Adam Jones. He's a star center fielder and a black man, and they used the N-word in 2017. And I think it all starts at the top, and I think Trump is responsible for making hatred the thing to be. If you're,
yeah. I was just going to say
I think that's what it is. Do you guys agree with me on that?
Yeah, that's one of the consequences of his election. I was just going to say the exact same thing, Ralph. He's made it fashionable.
Yep.
Right.
Made racism fashionable. Yep, he has.
I'm so disappointed that, if this was Alabama, you could say, well, that's the way it was, always will be, and stuff. You can't write it off when it's the Northeast, when you have schools at Harvard, and, this is incredible. How could this be happening to our country? I really have tears in my eyes.
Well, until Big Papi came along, no African-American players wanted to play in Boston because of the epithets.
Right.
You name the player. And they will tell you that what they had to put up with was racial epithets. I mean, name some of those.
Tommy Harper, who happens to be...
Tommy Harper was one of them.
Reggie Smith.
Yeah.
Reggie Smith was particularly vocal about it and bitter about the way he was treated.
Well, it goes over into the Celtics also with Bill Russell.
Well, the Celtics, but now you're talking about Russell. That's going back to the 50s and the early 60s. One of the Red Sox players, and he was from, I think, the Dominican, and he was black. His sister was a close friend of my sister. And this fellow would come back from these ball games and talk about what he had to put up with at Fenway Park. When I was at Dartmouth, and I graduated from there in '67, my roommate, who was from Marblehead, we would drive down and go to Red Sox games, and we would sit in the stands, and more often than once, you would take note of the fact that there was an African American sitting in those stands. If there were back then, if there were 5,000 people, there were 12 African Americans. And by gosh, before the game was over, somebody was screaming the N-word at him. I mean, if you ever saw Common Ground. If you ever read the book Common Ground by Tony Lucas, one of the great writers. I think he won a Pulitzer for Common Ground, and that was about when busing began in Southie, in Boston. And my gosh, the hatred for blacks among the Irish was just awful. And the thought that somehow that mindset had changed. I think what happened, especially with the election of Obama, is that people, felt the way they felt. Their feelings, their racism didn't go away. But it was only after Trump was elected, after that campaign of, only the most disgusting words and most disgusting behavior of a presidential candidate in the history of mankind.
Anybody elected, you couldn't have a guy elected in any city that would say things like that, let alone.
It made you pine for Ted Cruz, if you know what I mean. It was like, right. Holy mackerel! How can people vote for this guy? Yeah, and I still wonder the same thing. But the fact is, an awful lot of people in the South were raised as, hating blacks, and only now you've got a Secretary of State who is, I don't think he's in the Ku Klux Klan, but he's damn close. Right. This is a guy who has real terrible racial hatred, and he's our Secretary of State. And again,
well, that doesn't scare me as much as the person in charge of education hates public education.
Well, that's certainly true as well. And that's not anti-black. That's religious. That's a religious bias
very much so.
Against the poor. That's a religious bias against the poor, is what that is. And who's poor? Who's poor in their minds? Who's poor in their minds are the Latins and the African Americans, right?
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
What scares me more than anything is this son of a bitch and his cronies are going to try to knock down the wall between church and state here.
They're going to try.
The hell out of me.
Well, they're going to try, but it's going to be, it's going to be interesting to see what happens because these people are 39.
That has to go to the Supreme Court. I am assuming.
Well, yeah, and we'll see. I mean, maybe. Maybe with this new guy and Roberts and the worst Supreme Court justice in the world, maybe it'll be allowed. I don't know. We'll see. But what's so
Ruth
interesting?
Ginsburg has to continue to live and be healthy.
Well, we root for her every day. But
right.
Going back to your subject of these racist fans in Boston. I suspect for them it was, more of a chuckle, than anything else.
I don't know.
This is the sort of thing that African Americans have been putting up with in ballparks all over America to this day.
Right.
It'd be interesting to take a poll, of the handful of African Americans who are left in baseball, to see whether they've encountered it before. There was an article in the New York Times a few days ago where they interviewed 4 or 5 African Americans, and they said, absolutely, we hear it all the time. Yeah. No, it's there are apparently 2 groups of people in the world.
Several years ago, a writer named Howard Bryant.
The best.
American,
the very best.
Shutout.
Yep.
About the institutionalized racism of the Red Sox franchise.
That's right.
Okay, and how Yorkie, I know I've said this a million times, but how Tom Yorkie is in the Hall of Fame is beyond my comprehension.
Well, without a doubt. He had a plantation in South Carolina.
Yeah, and he had one of his long-term managers was Pinky Higgins,
who was the most racist.
And the whole organization was permeated by racism. And
well, Joe Cronin, who was the general manager, he was the manager before that. He was a terrible racist. The thing was, of course, is that when Cronin was the manager, he was player manager. He didn't have to worry about racism because there were no blacks in baseball when he was the manager. But he did have to worry about it starting in 1946 when 3 members of the Negro League tried out for the Red Sox. Some of the politicians in Boston were threatening to picket Fenway Park, and so they agreed to allow 3 members of the Negro Leagues to come and try out. Jackie Robinson was one of them.
Really?
Yes. Sam Jethro won.
Sam Jethro was the second one, and I can't remember. The third one was a lesser talent.
Yeah.
But anyhow, they went through the paces.
I thought Willie Mays was someone.
No.
Not Mays.
No.
Okay.
No, they scouted.
No, I found a letter when I was researching Dynasty where a scout, one of the Yankee scouts, said you ought to take a look at W. Mays. But because he was black, the answer was not on your life. So, I mean, theoretically, the Yankees could have had Mantle and Mays in the same outfield. But no. But as far as the Red Sox were concerned, during that tryout, and at the tryout were Eddie Collins and I think Cronin and the owner. And one of those 3 people in the middle of that tryout screamed, "Get that N-word off the field." There was no way that Yawkey was going to take an African American on that team. And as everybody knows, it wasn't until 1959, which is 12 years after Jackie Robinson came into Major League Baseball, that Yawkey took a player, and that player was really a bench guy.
Yeah, he's Pumpsy Green, Elijah
Pumpsy Green was his name. His brother was a great football player.
You're right. I forgot about that.
Cornell Green, yeah.
Cornell Green. I went to interview Pumpsy while I was writing Fenway. He was the janitor of the high school where...
Berkeley High.
Berkeley High School.
Yeah.
Exactly. He was the janitor of Berkeley High School. And one of the sweetest, nicest people. And he was talking about the fact that the plane landed at the Boston airport, and he started to get off the plane, and there were reporters waiting for him there, and he was looking behind himself, wondering who in the world are the reporters waiting to talk to. And of course, they were waiting to talk to him.
Right,
but he didn't get to play very much.
This is 12 years after Jackie Robinson.
Right.
They were the last.
I mean, where in the 50s, let alone 1959, the early 50s, like we had 7 MVPs in those years.
All in the National League.
Yeah.
In the National League. Not in the American League, in the National League. The National League had the most marvelous players. Besides Ernie Banks and Hank Aaron.
And Beck did have a bunch. They had Page and they had Larry Doby, did Cleveland, and
but that was
a number of others.
Beck was hated by all the rest of the owners for it.
The White Sox had Manny Minoso, and that was basically about it. Yeah.
That was about it. That really was.
Between Hank Sauer in 1952 and Dick Rote in 1960, all the MVP winners in the National League were African American.
That's right. That's right. And that's why the National League won All-Star games for almost the entire decade.
In fact, they once asked Richie Ashburn why the Phillies, the Whiz Kids, never won another championship, and he said no blacks.
Well, and then you look at people like Richie Allen, who played for the Philadelphia Phillies and was, as far as I'm concerned, a Hall of Fame ball player. He was screamed at every game. People were screaming N-word at him every game that he played. And they wondered why he was so bitter. Oh, Richie, how come you're so bitter? Try having, somebody scream the N-word at you every day when you go to the ballpark. And these are your fans. Try doing that and see how you like it.
I'll tell you, it's my theory that a lot of these teams, when they sign black ball players, they ship them to, the South Atlantic League, like Frank Robinson and Curt Flood.
Veda Pinson
to try to break
I think
them.
They did it basically because, like a lot of white people, they had no idea the ramifications of doing it. I mean, these white people who say, I don't see any racism. Well, nobody's calling me a damn white person. That just doesn't happen. So you don't realize what it is to be standing in these people's shoes. So you send them to Birmingham, Alabama, where basically they don't even want you, out on the field. And then you go out on the field and they send death threats. There was a marvelous documentary on Hank Aaron fairly recently on why he is so bitter. People say, "Oh, Hank Aaron, he hit all those home runs. Why is he so damn bitter?"
I did not know he was bitter until this moment.
When he was trying to break Babe Ruth's record for lifetime home runs, he has garbage bags full of hate mail. Garbage bags full of hate mail. And when he hit that last home run to beat the record, as he was rounding second base, there were two young kids who ran out of the stands. They were thrilled that he did it, so they were there to accompany him. And there was a moment where he wondered if those two kids were somehow going to, stab him or shoot him to stop him from scoring. I mean, you see this documentary on Aaron at the end of the thing. I played it for my class. After Robinson, you like to think, well, okay, Jackie Robinson came into baseball, and that's the end of, racial problems.
Oh.
But this is 1974. 1974, Hank Aaron went through every bit the trauma that Jackie Robinson went through when he came in.
The reason they stopped throwing at Robinson and Campanella was because Newcomb came.
Well, without a doubt. Oh, sure. And some of the white pitchers did the same.
Yeah.
I mean, after Jackie was a Dodger for, 2 months, just about every one of the white players, said to themselves, even if they were racist, this guy can win us a championship. And they became, very protective of Jackie's health because they saw what a talent the guy was. But you see what Hank Aaron went through.
You wrote a book on Aaron. I
wrote a children's book on Aaron. Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did.
Did you
Brave? It's called Brave in Every Way. You got to see this documentary. You can get the documentary on YouTube.
What I do is I post birthdays on Facebook. Like yesterday, I put down today just a simple declarative statement. I see yesterday. Today is the 86th birthday of the great Hall of Famer, the Say Hey Kid, Willie Mays.
Can you imagine the man is 86 years old?
Yeah,
Willie Mays is 86 years old.
Henry Aaron is 83.
It makes me feel incredibly old, having seen him when I was 4.5, 5 years old.
I put up Henry Aaron. I said he handled the whole situation with an incredible amount of class when he was chasing the route.
He was one of the classiest ball players. But
I'll tell you, when he was the classiest is when Barry Bonds broke his record. Yeah. And everybody and their dog knew that it was an unlevel playing field. Doesn't take anything away from Bonds against the people he was playing against. But if you compare their careers, he was definitely helped along the way by steroids. And he was so classy, he just didn't refer to that. He congratulated him, and he stood out there. I'm sorry he's embittered. Because I know Mays is terribly embittered and rightfully
but Mays,
so.
Mays is embittered. Mays is embittered for a different reason. Aaron is embittered because of the racism. Mays is embittered for really kind of an odd reason. He made $100,000, $125,000. Willie Mays, when he was playing, made a lot of money. He's got this beautiful mansion in San Francisco. He lives very, very well. But he now sees that the top players are making $15 million a year. A-Rod made $25 million a year. And that's what made Willie Mays bitter. The fact that these guys have made so much money and he didn't, which is kind of odd if you ask me. But, you know, everybody's different. Willie's entitled to his own form of bitterness, believe me.
As we all are to some extent, but when I say I'm sorry that he's bitter, it doesn't serve one to live life embittered.
I had the most interesting conversation with Monty Irvin, who I just adored. I had the opportunity to drive Monty from his home near Ocala to St. Petersburg for a little sports gathering that we had. And we talked a little bit about Willie. You know, they played side by side. Willie was the center fielder. Monty was the left.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And you know, Monty, who was the gentleman of gentlemen, one of the great human beings of baseball history, said that it just made him so sad that Willie felt that way, that a man of such incredible talent could be so unhappy. And he was an unhappy, probably still is. You know, and Monty, here's a guy who started his career in the major leagues late because baseball wouldn't take an African American until 1947. I mean, Monty is in the Hall of Fame, sure, but Monty could have had another 10 years.
And
there was
as
no
you
bitterness.
reminded us,
No
Peter,
bitterness.
a while back, he was Branch Rickey's first choice.
Yes, he was. But such a humble, incredible man. He almost didn't want to talk about it. He was so humble. He didn't want to take anything away. Didn't want to take anything away from Jackie and what Jackie did.
I think one of the things that happened with Willie Mays was that when the Giants moved out to San Francisco and they brought up Cepeda and certain others, because Mays had come from New York with the team, the San Francisco fans adopted, you know, all the ones who were brought up in San Francisco. Had no
McCovey, the Alous,
Cepeda, Lou, Wagner,
Cepeda, right.
The year after McCovey. And because Mays had the New York stamp on him, they didn't accept him right away.
Well,
hey,
but
the city
some of them did.
San Francisco is equally as racist as the city of Boston. They wouldn't sell him a house in St. Francis Woods, which is one of the richest places in the city, because of his color, and he knew it, and that embittered him, let alone coming to a strange city, let alone not having. It took him a long time to get over Leo DeRocher not being the manager.
That's
DeRocher
true.
Spoiled him like hell. And
well, DeRocher shielded him from a lot of the bad stuff. DeRocher made sure that the players, the teammates, never slighted Willie in any way. DeRocher adopted him the same way that Casey Stengel adopted Billy Martin and Mickey Mantle, just the same way. When the Giants got rid of DeRocher and went on to Wrigley or whoever the next guy was, Willie no longer had that champion. You're absolutely right.
And it was in a big way, it was unfair to Rigney too.
Yes, no, that's true.
That's very hard to manage a team when your superstar is unhappy all the time. No question. And to his credit, McCovey took over. I mean, McCovey sparkled. He was the kind of guy that you'd want to root for, because you could tell that he was enjoying it, and Spada was a great talent too before he got hurt.
Yeah.
Alan, you made a point that several times over the year or so that the Giants held out in '57. A case could be made that the Dodgers did as well, knowing that they were going to move. They were saving their talent for San Francisco. Guys like Davenport, Schmidt was a pretty good catcher that probably should have been called up a little bit earlier. And that sticks in my head. That's a great point. And that contributed to Willie's not being happy in San Francisco. Let alone, I mean, you take somebody, it was involuntarily that the players moved, the franchise moved voluntarily, but the players really didn't have much of a choice. It was before free agency, and you come along, it's 3,000 miles out of your element in the, very difficult for Willie.
Most of the old Dodgers who went from Brooklyn to Los Angeles were not thrilled.
No, not at all.
I was originally thrilled until he saw the dimensions of the Los Angeles Coliseum.
Exactly right.
Well, that was the Coliseum built by Wally Moon, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he kept hitting it into the strings.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Well, he didn't get there until 1959. Yeah.
Right. That is true.
Yeah, but Erskine, Reese, Hodges, Ferrillo, I mean, they're all on the downside.
Without a doubt.
When they went to L.A., and I'm sure you're uprooting.
Well, Maury Wills showed up, and he had that great year in '59.
Yeah.
And it became a whole entirely different team.
Yeah.
And the other wonderful thing about just to talk about Willie Mays for a second, is when I did my book on the Mets, amazing. I interviewed 4 or 5 of the players who were Willie Mays' teammates. Because if you remember, everybody was saying Willie Mays is too old, he can't catch a ball anymore, he can't run the way he used to, he should retire, and so forth and so on. Every one of these guys, when I asked them about Willie, said the same thing. They said, you have to understand something. Willie Mays was the best athlete on our team. He may have been 39 years old or 40 years old. Willie Mays was the best baseball player on our team. Every one of these guys said the same thing.
Yeah.
He was amazing.
Fans were comparing him to the old Willie Mays, which is obviously an unfair comparison no matter who you are.
And basically, his presence destroyed Agee as a ball player.
I don't follow you.
Because Tommy Agee was the regular center fielder. They get Willie Mays at the age of 41 in 1972.
Yeah.
They start playing Willie Mays, but Willie Mays at age 42 was not Willie Mays at age 25.
Right.
No.
So what did they do with Agee? Put him in left field?
No, he stopped hitting and they stopped playing him, and they wound up sending it to the Cardinals.
Oh, I see.
I thought Agee went for Tommy Davis before that.
No, they got him for Tommy Davis.
Yeah, they got him for Tommy Davis.
Yeah.
Yes, they did.
Right.
That's right. But they were weak in center field they had Don Hahn, felt by the name of Schneck, playing center field.
The favorite team. Yeah.
Yeah, but that happened to be, that 73 team happened to be my favorite all-time Met team. They were so down early on. Harrelson was hurt. They had guys going into into the military, going
back
and
forth. 3 games over 500 that season.
I know.
The Pirates were wrecked because Clemente was killed and Blas couldn't pitch anymore.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the Cardinals were good competition too.
They were 82-7. They were 3 games over 500. They had the worst record of any pennant winner ever.
Right. But they enjoyed the World Series, so that what can I tell you? Gentlemen, this has been terrific as usual.
It has.
I appreciate
it has. That's it.
And
time. We'll watch Obama win this fabulous Kennedy Award tonight.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. I'm out of the loop.
Oh, it's part of the daughter, Caroline Kennedy, and I think she have a son. Will be presenting this fabulous award to President Obama.
For what reason, may I ask?
They love him.
How did he earn it?
But he's a wonderful human being. You'll have to tune in to see.
Okay,
tune in tonight, and you'll see why.
I won't be listening to the Yankees then. I'll be tuning in. I'll be tuning in.
You can listen to the Yankees on your transistor radio and watch Obama win his award on the TV.
I have my telephone is basically with MLB audio. Is basically a transistor radio. I walk around.
Isn't that wonderful? They finally invented something that we used when we were kids. I used to go every night. Every night I fell asleep with my transistor radio in my ear when the Yankees were playing night games. Every year. Yeah.
Under the pillow and
under the pillow,
down
absolutely.
Low.
Well, see, I had a room. I had my own room on the second floor, so there was nobody, peeking in on me, so I could pretty well do what I wanted. So, okay. But it was fun to go under the covers with your transistor radio because it made the sound echo. It made it sound bigger, and there was nothing, to listen to Mel Allen, and he was just the most marvelous announcer. And I think Barber may have been there.
And Rizzuto was terrific early on.
Oh, Rizzuto was fantastic, but that was later. That was later. I remember driving down the New Jersey Turnpike, listening to Phil Rizzuto talk about his conversation with the Statue of Liberty during one of the games. I almost drove off the road.
But no, early on, before he became almost a caricature of himself.
Yeah.
He
was always
a caricature of himself. Terrific announcer. And his call of Maris's home run stands up to any. Barber made a call of that, and Rizzuto, one on TV and one on the radio.
Let me tell you something about Phil Rizzuto. He was a wonderful, wonderful person. And he loved the Yankees, and he loved the game of baseball.
His Hall of Fame acceptance speech is a classic.
A classic. The guy, he's just one of the great people I ever had the privilege, and I mean privilege, of getting to know. Just somebody who you would have loved to have been your uncle.
Peter Trunk, who does a show on this network, does the Dodger show.
My Facebook friend, Peter Trunk. Yeah.
Yeah, and he does a terrific. He has terrific memories of having coffee with Rizzuto. He was off to teach somewhere, and Rizzuto was off to do his thing, and they meet every morning. In a little town in New Jersey before getting on the freeway or going off their separate ways. And he feels the same way. And just nobody I've ever heard of has a bad word about Phil Rizzuto in any way.
Oh, no, not at all. And they loved him. His teammates loved him. And they showed their love for him.
Of all my memories of DiMaggio kind of broke the ice for Rizzuto in early batting practices. These old gruff Yankees, fighting for time in the cage and what have you. And here's little Phil Rizzuto, who hated Stengel because when he tried out for the Dodgers, did Rizzuto, Stengel said, "Go get a shoe shine, kid. You're not."
Yeah, Stengel was the manager of the Dodgers at the time that he tried out for the Dodgers. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, Phil was about 5'1" at the time. He grew to be about 5'4", and Stengel made a mistake.
Yeah.
Big mistake. Yet Stengel had Phil to play shortstop for him from 1949 to 1956. So
that's
not
true.
too shabby. Not too
shabby, but the Yankees cut him, gave him his release on Old Timers Day.
Yes, Bill told me the story. It's one of the bizarre stories of George Weiss's bizarreness. To call Rizzuto into his office and to say to Rizzuto, we have to cut somebody. I would like you to pick the person we're going to cut. I mean, it's just so bizarre. Why didn't he just say to him, we're cutting you? You know?
And he went through all the, you could cut this guy, cut this guy. And Weiss looks at him and says, well, it's you.
Yeah, exactly. It's just so strange. And yet, what they said about Rizzuto at that point was that anybody else would have blown a gasket and would have gone to the newspapers that afternoon and told the newspaper what a rotten son of a bitch George Weiss was. Phil didn't do that. Phil got in his car and drove home and never said a word. And it wasn't very long after that repaying Rizzuto's loyalty, they hired him to be the announcer with Mel Allen.
One of my favorite
Red Barber.
One of my favorite memories of Rizzuto announcing. They were playing in Minnesota. I forget whether it was 62 or 63. Roger Maris hit a ground ball to second base, and didn't bother running the play out. And the Minnesota fans started booing him like crazy. So as Maris is going into the dugout, he puts up his middle finger. Mm-hmm. And Rizzuto was announcing at the time. And he was like, "Did you see that? Did everybody see that?" And he went absolutely nuts over that.
Well, I don't know if you guys remember, the Yankees had Kent Hadley.
Yeah. That guy
I got his baseball card somewhere. Kent Hadley became a Kansas City player very shortly thereafter.
Rizzuto made a faux pas on Kent Hadley that we won't even talk about on podcast radio, let alone real.
Okay, 10 minutes ago we were saying goodbye. Are we still saying goodbye?
Goodbye, gentlemen.
Bye.
I have to sign.
Thanks for a great evening.
Okay.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Right, take it.
Bye, everybody out there.